Business continuity is something that I think people should be able to relate with. There's going to be any disruption, it is minimal impact on your business.
Or you see one mama in the market that has been selling Iru, locust beans. I'm very sure that she has one Gen Z daughter or son who would rather go on a camera and do TikTok. That person might not even be interested in going to sell Iru and have all the smell all over her.
You know, it only takes one experience, one ugly experience.
I know of a business, good enterprise, doing well, and the volumes were good. But over time, right, numbers were not jiving. And there was an audit done. The revenue was what the promoters were seeing. You were not looking at bottom line. So at the end of the day, profitability, of course, was eroded. And honestly, that business didn't make it.
Any risk management that you are doing that is reactive, I trust you, is almost not risk management again.
This is the Coronation Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Coronation Podcast. My name is Gloria Anikwe. I'm the Group Head of Corporate Banking in Coronation Merchant Bank. And with me today is the Chief Risk Officer of the Merchant Bank, Saheed Alamatu. Welcome on board, Saheed.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. It's my pleasure.
Okay. So today our discussion is going to be centered around the silent threat, how overlooking business continuity can erode enterprise value. Okay. So, Said, you know this is basically your forte, right? From the risk perspective. So? It is, because for me, it's about business. And most times it's always a buzzword between us. But in this discussion, we'll try to balance it, because as much as we want to make money, it's also important to mitigate and avoid risk where possible. Also to help us see these businesses that we work with transcend generations. So today we have statistics that has shown that over 70% of African enterprises don't have documented or any form of business continuity plan in place. You know, that for me is a very scary number, because what it means is that there is a lot of risk of extinction or maybe death of these businesses. I don't know where these numbers or how these numbers have been coined, but from the risk side, what do you think of those numbers? I think it's really huge and it calls for a bit of worry.
Okay, so thank you, Gloria. I mean, those numbers are scary, like you have said, but I also think it probably will be the reality. And the reason why I'm saying so is that a lot of people, especially in Africa, may not be interested in business continuity because, number one, as you know, business continuity is not a financial risk. So it's not something that is directly linked, you know, to revenue generation. So for a lot of people, because it's a non-financial risk, it's not something they are interested in. You understand? So it's actually a non-financial risk. It's a form of operational risk. It's a consequential risk. So it's not the risk that you set out, you know, to take. For most financial risks, you actually set out to take them, and your objective is to make money or revenue. So I think that's one of the reasons why they may not be interested, you know, in this. I think the other thing is that business continuity is typically a low frequency but high impact event. So low frequency means that it's not something that occurs all the time. And you know, when something doesn't occur all the time, people just hope they will be lucky, or they just think, look, it can be someone else, but it can't be me. So that's one of the reasons why so many people may not just be interested in, you know, taking on business continuity and integrating it into, you know, their business. Of course, maybe the other thing is the costs. You know, it's the cost of implementing business continuity as well. So I think it's important that people come to terms with it and realize that this is actually part of the cost of doing business. While it may seem not to generate revenue or have revenue impact immediately, it can actually give you competitive advantage. It can actually, you know, ensure that you minimize, you know, losses. So if people see it from this perspective, I think we have more people on board.
Listening to you, it's almost looking like it's focused majorly to corporates, because I really don't see that woman selling pomo on the street or in the market, trying to put, and you know, most of them make quite, it's an enterprise really,
Oh,
and
sure.
you know, but I don't see her taking her 5,000 naira gain for the day, right, to look for how to go and implement a business continuity plan. Or you see one mama in the market that has been selling iru locust beans for the longest, you
Okay.
know, and then one of the business continuity plan is maybe somebody who succeed her, and I'm very sure that if she has one Gen Z daughter or son who would rather go on a camera and do TikTok, that person might not even be interested in going to sell iru and have all the smell all over his or her body.
Okay.
You know, so again, I think I don't know if it depends on the type of business or you know, the generations that are going to actually onboard those businesses.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't have to be depend on the type of business or the scale of, you know, the business we're talking about. Business continuity can be implemented in several ways. You can also almost customize or scale down to, you know, your level of business or the scale of your business. Like the examples you have given, for example, and I think you also sort of also answered the business continuity, for example, that needs to be in place. So if what you're doing, you're successful in doing it, you know, no matter how crude, in quotes, it may look, the most important thing is that are there people that can take over, you know, this business from me? I've seen instances where people start, you know, almost locally, you know, like that, but they're making good money. And they have children that they have also trained in school with this same business, you know. And if you're not careful, those children could even take on a formal job and never even earn as much as, you know, their parents were at me.
But maybe they will feel more dignified.
Exactly. You know, so I think there's some awareness that needs to happen. You know, clearly, you know, educating people, I think that's very important. And people seeing the bigger picture. Because part of the reason why I think why you're educated is to probably help promote that business and, you know, brand it and make it better.
I kind of agree, especially within the corporate space. If I remember correctly, Ades in Credit 101, they taught us about the 5 C's of credit. You know, but bringing those 5 C's of credit into businesses today, maybe we would have touched a bit of some of these risks, right? But nobody had called out business continuity as part of a risk that should be analyzed on its own as a standalone, you know. And over time, we've also seen businesses where, as big as those corporates could be, you know, decision making is vested on the key promoters, and you find out that if, for instance, anything happens to that key promoter or key decision makers, you see a lot of struggle in the business. And you know, it brings me back to some of the business when it comes to business law, where it is expected a business is a separate entity of its own, and so what it should be is that it should run independent of every other person in the business. So
what you're talking about is real. So what has happened is that we've had evolution even within the risk management space itself. So you said that when you're talking about 5 C's of credit, nobody talks about, or at least, you know, call out maybe business continuity. Now, the truth is, if you look at the credit risk management space itself, you know, before now, maybe credit was the predominant risk.
Yes.
At some point, people felt, okay, market risk came in, and people felt, okay, operational risk came in. Even after operational risk, when we had credit and market, everybody now says, look, if it's not credit or market risk, then it must be operational risk. But what have we found today? You have found out today that there are so many other risks that have been material enough that people have differentiated them, you know, from operational risk. So if you take even information technology risk itself is been taken out. If you look at things like maybe cyber security risk has been taken out. So, but why am I saying this? Business continuity has always been part of it, but maybe it wasn't really called out in such a way that people can focus on it. It wasn't explicit enough. So, in the same 5 C's of credit, when you're talking about succession, at least they will talk about the promoters who is going to succeed, then you're talking about business continuity. When you are looking at the supply chain and you want to be sure that the business has multiple sources of supply, you know, or you have diversified, you know, customer base, it's also business continuity, you know, that you're talking about. So business continuity is something that I think people should be able to relate with. And essentially what it does is to ensure that, if there's going to be any disruption, it is minimal impact on your business. And if it does, you can quickly recover, to full operations and, of course, meet your target or objective as a business.
It looks like plenty English, oh. I'm telling you honestly, especially for that, my one Baba that is doing so well in his business. I'll come and be speaking this kind of English for him. As it is, I know that it's quite important, but again, we have to find a way to drive it home. So it's not looking very very academical for most of our most of our businesses. But let's just bring it home. If we bring it home to Africa and Nigerians, before now we saw a lot of large corporate conglomerates which were mostly foreign owned. But interestingly and proudly, we're seeing a lot of indigenous businesses thriving, doing well, and hitting good volumes and revenues, But I don't know how we would drive this business continuity plan to these corporates. How have we fared in trying to drive this home? Because I really can't speak of most of our indigenous businesses who have transcended generations, mostly foreign owned, but it's important that we bring it back home, and try to preach it to our brothers and sisters, because it will be very refreshing and rewarding to see most of these businesses thrive and even go beyond where they are today. Especially looking at us as a bank, even in Coronation Merchant Bank, besides the corporates, we deal a lot again with HNIs and ultra HNIs who also are business owners. So we should find a way.
So I agree completely with you. So the reality is that as businesses grow, it becomes more compelling, to put structures in place. Ideally, maybe even from onset, let's even assume that for some things that the promoter would have loved to do if it's resource issue, but as they scale up and they grow, it becomes more compelling to ensure that you have the right, governance in place. That the business can run independent of, the owners. These are business continuity, and that if there's to be any interruption or unexpected event, the business can still survive, run on its own. I don't think it's a difficult thing. Like you have rightly said, in Coronation, for example, we deal with various, customers. Now, I think we also have responsibility to advise these customers appropriately. So as we analyze, our interest should not just be on the immediate transaction that we're doing for them.
Yes, budget is running.
Oh, but we have to balance it.
Is running.
You see, so what you have just said now is one of the reasons why so many people will not do business continuity. So I think we should also be focused not just on the immediate.
You can see, I'm thinking like that
man
that I'm going to
I agree completely with you. So, but I think what is important is to think long term, so that you're not just around for now, but you're around, for now and for a long time, and you run a viable business. I think that ultimately, helps you to achieve your objective and to have good returns for the different, stakeholders of the business.
Would you say financial literacy is a part of or an element of business continuity? So some time ago, I know of a business, good enterprise, doing well, in the value chain of another large corporate or very large corporates, right?
Okay.
And the volumes were good. But over time, when you come sometimes, you see very brand new cars. If it was a guy, maybe he would have married second or third wife, But good cars, beautiful jewelries on the promoter and all that. But over time, right, numbers were not jiving. And there was an audit done. Honestly, for the life of anybody who would have thought the business was thriving well. And, the audit revealed that the revenue was what the promoters were seeing, monies were coming in, the volumes were coming into the bank. Like, you were not looking at bottom line. So at the end of the day, profitability, of course, was eroded. Even the net worth, or what we call the equity, was eroded because, of course, when you had accumulated losses over the period. And honestly, that business didn't make it.
Yeah, so I think it's important that as part of business continuity, that you have appropriate governance in place. and that will include things like, accounting practices, things like, having the right internal control, and that you are transparent. Now, it is possible that you are the promoter of the business, but you may not have all the skill sets that is required for the business to survive. And that's why in certain instances, you may have to outsource. So you may have to get an auditor, or you get someone who will audit your books, prepare your statement of accounts, and you have someone who will provide advisory services. You may have to work with, like in Coronation, for example, we do financial advisory. So we actually have an investment desk, and we also help people to raise, capital, so that the business can truly be bigger than, the resources of the owners. That for me is part of business continuity. So you are right. I think a lot of awareness needs to happen. There's a lot of education that needs to happen. And let's bring it to, we don't even have to go down, the chain. If you look at the banking sector, I recall when banks were to go through consolidation, we still had quite a number of banks that were owned by individuals. They were largely private owned. People were a bit reluctant to release, those banks and make it accessible for the public to invest. But you see, they were compelled to do so because of the amount that was involved at that time. I mean, I recall it was 25 billion. At a point when I think capitalization was like 2 billion. Yeah. So getting 25 billion then was a lot of money. So they were forced to do so. But if you ask the owners today, I'm sure they're better off for it.
Yeah,
they're better off because what has happened is that they're bigger, they're better. Their fortunes have multiplied. Yeah. So I think we have that responsibility to let people know the advantage, and hopefully we bring them on board.
So let's come to, let me even bring it back to business. So I can talk more around the corporate space, right? We've seen in recent times a lot of disruptions. Maybe we like call it supply chain disruptions, infrastructural deficiencies, which of course have also caused some of those disruptions.
Sure.
And you find times when maybe very reputable names which you had done business over time with have maybe maybe delayed in making their payments or their payment obligations. And let me explain what I mean. Now, you have an average conversion cycle, average cash conversion cycle for facilities.
Sure.
And especially if I look at the FMCG space, especially for the ones who are producing or manufacturing, so they would have imported, and over the period they have a timeline to import the raw materials, produce, and then sell. Now, so I have maybe an average conversion cycle of maybe 120 days, which I've put in place. You find out that sometimes within that 120 days, customers come back to you to say, I'm not able to meet this obligation, and these are the reasons. Justifiable reasons, understandable reasons. But my risk guys now. Risk, which I understand, because ideally, for you to have come to ask for this tenure, you understand your business cycle. But again, this is business. You can't see the whole 9 years. Now we find instances where we now have to come back, and sometimes risk in my head I'm like, can you run business first and understand it? But sitting now and discussing this business continuity plan, it looks like things that are meant to be done in retrospect.
Let me jump in.
Yeah.
Business continuity should not be in retrospect. It actually should be a proactive measure.
Yeah.
Any risk management that you are doing that is reactive is almost not risk management again.
Yeah, but remember that these things are evolving. Some of these things are evolving circumstances. So some of them might not have been in place at the time they started.
So you are right. So let me say this. Part of risk management also is to look into the future, to think of that there's something we call emerging risk as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, things evolve, so you must be able to plan for them. And maybe in the cybersecurity world, for example, I think that comes readily. There's something called zero-day attack. And what that means is that it's never probably happened before. This is the first time we're seeing it.
You have to react.
You are responsible, for, you should respond to them. I don't want to use the word react. I think maybe you should be able to respond appropriately. Now, what this means is that you must be able to plan. So planning is very important. Now, let me get this right. Planning doesn't mean that you will not suffer any interruption, but it does mean that your interruption will be minimized, or the losses, if any, will also be minimal. And then you can fairly quickly, come back and, you're back to normal operations. That's what planning does. So I would still say, even in those instances, it's very important that the owners plan appropriately. It's important that the owners of those businesses, they have what I would call buffer, or redundancy in place. Now, for most owners, reality is that even when they know that it can happen, they don't want to build those buffers, they don't want to build those redundancies, because they're looking at the cost, they're looking at the profits. But you see,
we can pray, it's not my portion prayer.
Exactly. But if you think long term, what will happen is that you have moderate or fairly good, return, and then you'll be safe, sound, and you'll be around for a long time. I think that's better than, being affected by, various volatilities, around, if you ask me.
Well, speaking of owners,
yes,
and that brings me back to one elephant in the room. If you look at the African enterprises, there's always a key promoter.
Sure.
So in this case, we speak about key man risk and succession planning. And so sometimes when these questions come from risk, or we're discussing it in business, I almost ask myself that, how do I know what this man is thinking in his head? How do I know who he wants to succeed in? Because a lot of time people keep those informations to their chest.
To themselves, yeah.
But looking at this discussion around business continuity plan, it brings me to another case of a business, right? Indigenous business, thriving very well,
okay.
But of course, death happened. The key owner passed, and it became issue because there was no succession plan. There was, of course, he had more than one son.
Oh, okay.
So the question is, who is going to be the heir apparent to the business?
For the business,
and then even staff or other people in the business, people had their preferences, and it became a family quarrel, which also affected the business.
So when it comes to business continuity, succession planning is very, very important.
Yeah.
Not just even for the promoter or maybe the MD of the company, but for key roles, across the company. It's important that potential successors have been identified, so that it could be death in this case, as you have given. It could also be some other reasons. Somebody could exit the organization. Someone could also be sick and unable to function and come back to work. There must be potential successors across the business that have been identified that could then take over, from the incumbent, if the situation demands it. So for me, I think that's very important. And it's something you have to be professional about. I'll come back to this. Now, for the family business, it is even possible that you have sons or you have children that you think that you have in mind. But it's important to be very professional about this. If you think they don't have the interest or competence to run the business, it is not important that you hand over that business to them. You can always, get professionals to run your business. There are quite successful families, that run a family office now. What they do is that they bring in professionals to monitor their investments for them, to help them to maximize, the various investment portfolios that they have. And the children can be distant in terms of the day-to-day running. You may put them on the board of the companies if you think, and that is also if you think they have value to add.
Sorry,
you understand? See, I know what I'm saying.
Let's now internalize this thing as Nigerians.
Oh yeah.
And Nigerians that we are. So I have my dad is one very rich, successful man.
Sure.
He has a business. You say they should bring one family office, somebody that I don't know, and me, I'm sitting there. I'm not good. A lot of people will not allow those businesses thrive without them being there, because again, remember that it's my father. It's
sure.
I have this mentality and I have this right over that business. Okay. And with the parents that we know today, not a lot of them will be very unsentimental about it.
About
So
it, yeah.
I don't know how the family offices will run separate from the children.
Okay.
You know,
So
especially maybe if in the event of maybe a sudden death of
sure.
the promoter.
So that's why it's important that if you're going to run the family office, for example, you know, you run it while, you know, you are still alive, so that the business run, and if where you think there are excesses, you are in position to correct those things, number one. Number two, to run the proper one is be guided by, there's a legal framework, the agreements, you know, signed and all that, that protects those who are running the business. And of course, what that means also is that the family or other stakeholders know what their role is. I think that has to be clearly spelled out. But for me, I think it's also some bit of ignorance. And like I said, people have to be educated.
Education, I think,
people
is
have
very
to be
key.
educated. That's very, very important. People have to be educated. Now, talking about succession, you know, beyond human beings, even automating your business is also part of succession. In a way, because you don't tie everything around human beings. There are things today that technology can do for you, so why not?
So bring me again to another point.
Yeah.
Or another scenario. You see this automation,
Sure.
platformization, technology.
Yeah.
That brings us to another, or poses another form of risk and exposures to businesses, which again has to be tied into whatever business continuity. Because you know, you can wake up one day and the entire fortune of that business is gone.
I agree with you.
You know, because with the advent of all the platformization, cloud services and all that, you know, and I don't know how robust this business continuity plan and risk management around that cyber fraud and cyber risk
Security
is today. Yeah.
Okay, so for automation and related things, you can always have cybersecurity in place to ensure that, you know, you manage the risk around that. So if there's risk around confidentiality of information, integrity, or if it's around the availability of information, and precisely in terms of business continuity, so you have things like you must have a disaster recovery plan in place. And that disaster recovery plan means that it will also mean that you have a disaster recovery site. It could mean that you have an alternative site where you can operate from as a business. Now, these things are possible. I think what is important is for people to open up and get, you know, the right advice and professionals to help them implement, you know, all of this. Like I said, it will cost money, but you will understand that most people are a bit hesitant because of the reasons we gave earlier. You know, they are not things that happen all the time. People hope that they are going to be lucky. There's a cost, you know, to doing it. They are not directly related to revenue generation. So, but you know, it only takes one experience, one ugly experience, and then you will understand why it is important to ensure that you have business continuity practices in place. For me, it is not. It is just something that must be in place. It has to be part of the business, and you must take it as part of the costs, you know, of doing business.
Listening to this, it just looks like business continuity plan, right, is costly.
Okay.
And it's also it's not a short-term goal, or it's not short-term. Because if I listen to it, I don't know how many people can deploy that level of cost, or can absorb that level of cost in their business, trying to deploy the business continuity plan into their business. Also, listening again, it's looking more like a long term, because if I take an average business, if I want to put a business continuity plan around my supply chain, right, it means I have to either backward integrate or outgrow or partner with other people, and in some instances it's a long-term goal.
Sure.
You know,
so if you are looking at I think business continuity itself must take a medium to long-term view. I think that's important. In any case, what you are trying to address is that you are not around for a short time, but you are around for a long time. So it's important to have that view. But I tell you, it's not about cost alone. There are so many benefits of business continuity. Now, one of them, for example, are you aware that there are some potential investors that will be more comfortable with you when they understand that you have these practices in place.
Yeah.
So the implication of that is that it can, number one, give you access to capital. Number two,
cheaper capital.
Cheaper capital, exactly.
Yeah.
So it can. I was going to go to that. I can bring down the cost of capital
business.
for you.
Yeah.
And of course, what that means is that it can also give you competitive advantage. So by the time you look at it, it may look like just call it like part of your initial capital outlay. But ultimately, you realize that you get more than the cost that you have deployed in doing that business.
So let me wear my accounting cap now.
Okay.
Right. The cost of deploying this business continuity plan, is it something I can capitalize?
Oh, okay. Yes, it will still. It depends. And it can. I think for me, it's not going to be a special accounting treatment. It will still follow the normal accounting rules around what is maybe what is capital expenditure, what is OPEX and all of that. So that is what it is. So if, for example, because you are talking about a potential successor, so beyond the incumbent for a particular or critical role, you also have someone that you think must be senior enough as a backup. You're not going to capitalize that cost, for
that
example.
One would just be,
that would be an operating expenditure. Yeah. But if, for example, you are investing in maybe disaster recovery sites, and it's a huge, expenditure, you understand. And as long as it is not a service that runs for a year alone, so you have assets that you're going to depreciate over time. That's a capital expenditure, for example. So it depends. I think the other thing to note also is that when it comes to the business continuity, you can always tailor it to the scale of business that you do. So absolutely. I would like to correct that notion that most people have that, look, is one very huge cost. No, the cost has to be appropriate for your level of business that you do. And we can guide you, we can guide you, we can guide, viewers, I think it's interesting to know that we're partners in Coronation, Merchant Bank. Yeah. We can provide, guidance to you for your businesses, for families, HNIs. I think it's something that we're willing to do. We have our investments, management desk, so the investment arm of the bank can always provide financial advisory. We can help you to raise capital as you so desire, and we can proactively guide you in structuring your business to ensure that you have the right business continuity practices or sustainable practices in place, so that ultimately you have edge over your competitors, and of course we'll be better off, both of us will be better off for it. I would just like to highlight that.
Sarah, you are now taking my job. You are now doing marketing.
No, that's
this
fine.
Is my job. Do your risk management job and leave my job for me.
And take over my job.
Okay. Our customers are all watching.
Okay.
We have viewers and prospective clients also listening to this podcast.
Sure.
What would you say are the strong elements or the strong pillars of a business continuity plan that anybody who wants to deploy one should start eyeballing?
Okay, so to do business continuity, I think the first thing is I'm trying to run away from making it too academic, like you earlier said. So you have something called, business impact analysis. It's called BIA. And what that does is to assess, the critical functions of the business, and then to ask yourself that if something were to go wrong, what are the possible impacts, that you can have. And once you identify those critical areas of your business, and then you then start asking yourself, what are the measures that you need to put in place? So there is the business impact analysis, which essentially is, number one, you want to identify the critical functions or areas you need to address with respect to business continuity. Number two then is to then say you have the right planning in place. So there must be a documented plan, even if it's a succession plan, call it disaster recovery planning, call it, certain procedures for different areas. You must have those plans in place. Very important. And then, thirdly, more important is that those plans should be tested. And I'll give you a very practical example.
When you talk about having a documented plan, I can document something and file it away.
That's why I said the plans should be tested.
Okay.
Otherwise, what then happens is that, the day you have a real scenario, people don't even know what to do. It must be documented. It must also be tested, it must be communicated.
Yes.
Very important.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. So if talking about maybe testing your plan, for example, so if you have identified someone as a potential successor, you should give that opportunity to do what you want to do. Delegate more to that person.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that.
Job shadowing.
Job shadowing, delegate more to the person, you know, so that you mentor the person, and then you have the opportunity to know how that person is faring. In your own lifetime, for example, you may know if this person will be capable of taking on that role or not. You understand? So, for example, it can be as simple also as people also do, for example, you do fire drill for your business, especially for our customers who have factories and all that, who are prone, you know, to fire incidents. It's important that their fire drills are done at certain regular intervals. So you don't wait until one happens. It's not that you're praying that one happens, but if it does, you know, what will people do? The people know what the mass
where the extinguishers are, what
they know what
do,
to
where
do,
to
all of those
convene.
things. So all these practices have to be in place. You understand? So I think more importantly, even when you carry out those tests, carrying out those tests does not mean that there will not be gaps. There will always be gaps. So when you have gaps, the next thing then is you must take corrective actions. And I think that's the reason why you don't wait for a real scenario. You actually conduct tests, so that once you see those gaps, you can then take measures to address them.
Thank you. And I think one thing that I would, so you don't think we are just all business. We also know a bit of risk.
Oh, really?
Because again, of course, because I'm the first line of risk.
You, I want to hand over my job to you.
we're the first line of risk. We're the first line of risk,
okay,
right?
Good.
So we are the first risk analyst to the bank, you know. So there's something that we've also seen in some businesses, most corporates really, and you find that when it does happen, it has erodes the confidence value that stakeholders place on the business, and that has to do with corporate governance. You know, so within the space of reporting, the place of fraud and risk, and how they manage it over time. You know, so it's important again, because again I will think that it forms part of the business continuity of any enterprise. You know, so I think it has to be embedded in the corporate governance of that business. Yeah,
I mean, I agree with. Let me put it very simply. See, what reporting, and which I will almost say, reporting is about transparency. What it does for you is that it imposes what I would call discipline or market discipline. It's very simple. So if I come to work today and you're my supervisor, and the first thing you tell me in the morning is, Saheed, you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And by close of business, come back to me and tell me how you have fared with those things. Because I know that I will have to report, I'll probably work differently. There will be some discipline that day, surely. So my behavior will be different. So what disclosure or reporting does is that it instills market discipline. And anywhere you have market discipline, trust me, the process is better, the output is better, and the organization thrives better, and you are better for it. And for those who have such practices in place, you'll see that people are more open to do business with you. Once they know that, look, they can get information from you, they are probably more open to do business with you. And even attract more investors. Investors and all that. That's what it does. Yeah. So for me, why should people run away from it? It's actually better. Okay, so it's not far-fetched, right? And I think for our customers, we know that we preach this, and sometimes, again, it forms part of our risk reviews with our businesses, and where we find those kind of gaps, or we find things like today we do the environmental impact assessment of our businesses, and where we find those gaps, we ask you to say, of course, it's not like we're policing them. We just work with you to know what you're doing in that regard and how you are mitigating it from reoccurring. Because, like we said, this is business and things happen. You know, it's just for you to ensure that they don't repeat themselves. And you know, so today in Coronation Merchant Bank, right? Like if I look at the corporate space, we of course work with our customers to ensure that business continuity plan is embedded in what they do. You know, because again, we want to see them grow. We want to see
the business outlive even the principals, you know, because that's my pride today. If I see African enterprises doing so well,
I mean, I agree with Gloria, but I know that you guys are not always happy when we have a management credit committee, and after we seem to have taken all the numbers have been discussed, and then we say the environmental and social governance officer should raise any issue that he has. I'm sure some of your colleagues are not happy about that.
You don't. Why you are saying colleagues? Me, I'm not happy about it.
But it's something that we have to do, honestly, because
we know that,
like you have said, we're helping those businesses.
You know sometimes we wear two caps. You need to understand that we wear the cap of risk and bank, and we wear the cap of customers. So what we do in most instances as business people is that we just try to bridge. You know. But of course we don't expect you to let us lose, you know. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so again, for most of these businesses too, right, where in the instances where they want maybe deeper understanding or maybe want to implement a broader or more robust business continuity plan for their businesses, I'm sure it's something that we can do as a bank with our investment banking arm. You know, we have our enterprise risk team who would also work with them to ensure that it's done. On the treasury space, because again, you know, you need to let us know from the market risk and treasury space how we also will do when it comes to business continuity. Because again, you see, because of cross-border trades, because of different currencies and importations that we do, how is that space also managed? Okay, so if we have customers that are affected by, you know, any of these volatilities in the market risk space, be it foreign exchange, you know, interest rate risk, or volatility in commodity prices, we have, you know, a treasury team that is ready to work with them to, of course, implement all kinds of hedging products, you know, that can make sure that as much as possible we reduce those volatilities and we make their transactions or businesses, you know, very profitable for them. And risk mitigated, not risk free. Yes, not risk free, you are right, but at least we mitigate the risk to a point where, you know, they're sure that they will not have any loss that will be more than they can bear, and they will still be profitable. So our private banking clients are also listening to you. Those are the owners of businesses we're speaking to. Our private banking clients, you HNIs and the HNIs, what do you have to tell them in also trying to deploy this? We also have a very competent private banking team in Coronation Merchant Bank working, and I'm sure it will be a pleasure to guide you, provide, you know, advisory services either for your estates or in terms of maybe manage your portfolio, family offices. You know, we have professionals in the bank that can guide you. Just trust us, and I'm sure you'll be glad you did. So, CRO, one final word for our viewers and customers. What would you leave them with that would convince but not confuse them about the need for business continuity plan in their businesses? Okay. So I'm sure anybody that is listening to us by now should probably be convinced. But if you are not, business continuity is something that has come to stay. It should be seen as a plus for your business. It's something that you have to integrate with your business, you know, operations, so that at the end of the day, you're not just around, but you're around for a long time and you're viable, and your business can move from one generation, you know, to the other. Now, one of the advantages clearly is that it will make sure that there's continuity of businesses. Number two, it will ensure that as much as possible, there's minimal disruption, you know, to your business if there's one. And I think beyond that, you can easily rebound to full operations, you know, if there's any such thing. I think above all, it will also ensure that, you know, your reputation at a business, an organization, a family is protected. And trust me, there will be different stakeholders that will rather do business with you because they know that you have these practices, you know, in place. So I'm encouraging everyone to please come on board. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. It was good having you. So viewers, thank you for listening to us and this podcast. There is, and I'll leave us with this note. There is this old saying that the first generation establishes the business, The second generation consolidates it, while the third generation throws it all away. Now, in Coronation Merchant Bank, we don't want any of these generations to throw it away. What we do is we work with you to create value for the business, and we would work with you to preserve the value created so that your business transcends from generation to generation. And we'll do it ensuring that there is a robust and embedded business continuity plan in place for your business. You can contact us through the email address on our screen. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
This is the Coronation Podcast.